Hi, Joe. Welcome to episode 2 of Diary of an Accompanying Partner. I don't think we showed our members the name that we had chosen last time. So, big reveal when we uploaded it to the platform. And I don't know whether I told you the title, which was Unleash the Lab Rat or Lab Rat Unleashed, I think. So, there you go. It's all
You
out.
didn't. You didn't. I literally, when I saw it come up in the platform, I was like, oh my God, best name for episode ever. I just want to put out there that one of the titles or headings for the whole series that got scratched off the list was Meat Pies to Pad Ties, which I have been socializing, and don't be surprised if you still yet see the name changed.
Look, I loved it, as we discussed. I just didn't know whether it was entirely on brand for us, but you might see it in the name of an episode coming up. I'm very happy for it to go there. And I actually think it's a really good time to say that, in case it wasn't obvious from episode 1, these are very authentically us conversations. So we're no filter here. It's sharing as we go. And so I think while we like to bring professionalism to what we do here at Alora, I think this space particularly is one where we get to be very, very real, and especially as we're following you on this journey, Joe. So I thought it would be good to start with, how are you feeling this week?
Well, thank you for asking, because I feel that's probably how I will probably appreciate starting every week. And it can almost be a bit of a welfare check on my end of things, because I think this week I'm feeling very much that I'm at the brunt of everyone else's feelings as far as the rest of the household. So I'm sort of finding that hard and heavy this week. I think we're on holidays as a family at the moment. We're down at the beach where my family and my husband's family have both holidayed since we were kids, randomly, independently of each other. And that's a story for another day. But because there's not sort of the busyness of life and day to day things, I think there's lots of thinking happening with everyone. And so, particularly with the kids. And they go back to school next week. They're going to have to tell all their friends that they're leaving, because this relocation has actually been really quick and the turnaround has been quick. The kids had actually finished school for their summer holidays in the Southern Hemisphere when they found out that we were going. And so they go back to school on Monday, and there's going to be lots of tears and telling people what they're doing. I've sort of been in communications with the school principals, sort of prepping them that this is happening, and that what can we do to sort of hopefully make sure the wheels don't fall off when the girls go back to school next week. But, we live in a small country town, and so news is spreading like wildfire that we're on the way out. And so I've been getting lots of texts from the girls' friends' mums that have been like, so and so is going to be devastated when I tell them, and all of these sorts of things. So I'm feeling the load pretty heavily this week as far as like the girls' emotions. So that's been pretty rough. And also, just as a side note, my parents live nearby here. So I've spent a fair bit of time with my parents over the last couple of weeks as well. And my dad is actually unwell, and that's sort of playing on my mind as well. And the fact that we're literally moving not a 5-hour drive away, that we're literally moving to a 9.5-hour flight from Sydney, which would take them 6 hours to drive to an airport. Like, it's just, the distance is feeling quite big when I think about there's a load that I'm also leaving and offloading onto my mum and my sister here as well. And I think that's something that I sort of forgot about. That sounds ridiculous, but I feel, having seen a lot of dad in this last couple of weeks, I feel that is probably something that's playing on my mind subconsciously. So as far
Yeah.
as bringing the tone down in the first part of the episode, those are very much the real things that are top of mind at the moment. And it's probably, I guess, made it a little challenging to relax entirely as well.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't had a real holiday for a long time and was actually really looking forward to what this was going to look like with us actually checking out for 2 weeks because we never go on holidays for 2 whole weeks. And was excited about that pre this job coming up. And now it's just been manic doing stuff while trying to relax. So we've had a lot on. So
Yeah.
I don't know how
I
much detail you want me to go into as far as all of the relocation specific things, but I guess, yeah, that's the sort of things that are playing on my mind this week.
Yeah. And I mean, I have been really conscious of it as your friend, but also as your business partner, because you have been still working despite being on holidays. And I know how hard you work and how much you needed this break. And I have been reflecting on how often it is quite hard to switch off. But with a huge move like this on the horizon, it would be even harder. So I'm not surprised to hear that you haven't really been able to have that time. But I have also been reflecting on our theme for this month, which is identity shifts. And one of the topics that Amanda brought up around mourning. And it sounds like, just from what you talked about then, I mean, you've done this before, you've done the move before. And so one of my questions was going to be, are you sort of preemptively mourning, which it sounds like you might be a little bit in terms of leaving family behind. You're also, I know, selling your property, which is really a really big part of your lives. And so there's a lot of excitement, I know, but there's also, imagine, knowing what you have to go through and what's ahead and having to sit in that space side by side. I mean, you've talked a little bit about that, but do you want to go deeper, or do you want to move on?
No, I think it's an interesting point because I think when we moved last time to Singapore, we put tenants into our house and we sort of had a vague idea how long we were going to be away for. And this relocation is a lot more open ended. And so I was going to say as a family, but it was definitely not a decision as a family. It was a decision that my husband and I have made this time, is actually to sell our family home, which is a farm, a small farm in rural Australia, and to sort of throw that in the mix with a relocation, I think has just made it even more hardcore for the girls. And because that's been in such a short period of time, and because we have a short period of time in which we're leaving, it's not even just going onto the market, it's actually going to auction. So while between episode 1 and this episode, we've been dealing with an agent who will be selling the house. We've had a photographer in who's done photos and drone footage of the farm ready to put it on. So it's going on the market next week for a 6-week campaign to then go to auction. So everything is happening very quickly. So the girls are not only dealing with a relocation and moving and all of these, we're selling the house, the only house that they've both lived in as well. And it's making it feel a lot more permanent for them, and they're feeling quite rudderless because they're like, well, where do we go home to when we go to Australia? What does that sort of look like for us? So that has been another element that we've been managing. Like, this morning I had to approve the signage that will go out on the main roads to sort of direct people that there's a property for sale down our 10 kilometers of dirt road that the farm is on. It's just another whole element that I sort of had underestimated is probably playing on my mind. And that, yeah, I'll be not even like subtly mourning, like where I'm literally mourning the home that I've lived in for the last 10 years when it potentially sells, and all of the decluttering and everything that goes with that is definitely something that I'm mourning. And again, using that word to think about it, I guess, like, my father has Alzheimer's. I guess I'm preemptively mourning the time that I won't have with him while he's more compass, while we're still here, because he will, like, given the nature of the condition, he will deteriorate while we're away. And so there's that in there. So yeah, there's a bit going on when I
Yeah.
say it out loud, out
Yeah.
loud like that. But yeah, I feel that as far as that identity piece and the shift and things that Amanda talked about in our session, my shift where from the role of daughter that I don't often play. Like I don't really like obviously I do in a practical sense in that both my parents are still alive. I speak to them really regularly. I see them as often as I can, but my sister and I have talked a bit about this over the last few years. We're very much sort of almost switching into that us doing the parenting as the children of the parents. And so I guess I'm really feeling that role of daughter, sort of parenting the parent,
Yeah.
sort of kicking in a bit. And it's doing a lot of conversations around that and what does that look like and my ability to support my mum and my sister moving forward, doing it from a distance.
Yeah. And like they are all huge things to be managing just, as you said, 5 hours away or even streets away, let alone from another country. And the challenges that have come with that previously from being in Singapore. So yeah,
Mm,
it's huge. But I
mm,
think, you touched on your dad in our first episode as well, and we talked a bit about that sense of adventure that your parents have brought to you, and that is sort of part of the wind beneath your wings, I guess, in terms of you guys making this. And it's so nice to have those words of support from your dad. And I think that reminder to ourselves that we can be holding two feelings at once. You can be feeling a sadness for, what you're losing, but alongside that excitement of what's to come, and including, I think we all have this experience when we are away from the people that we love. You actually sometimes get really, really good quality time when they come and see
mm.
you or you meet somewhere else because it's outside the day to day. And so I think, yeah, it's the holding of two things at once, but maybe we should pick up on some of the excitement because you do have a trip coming up. I think it's 2 weeks away now. And but there is also a lot that you're managing alongside that, like choosing, I don't know, do you sell your belongings or do you take them with you? And so what's on your to-do list for this week?
For this week. Okay. So, well, something that did happen this week was that we had our first meeting with the relocation agency that the company that my husband's working for outsources the sort of global mobility aspects to. And so it was really good. It was a bit odd in that, like, again, we are Australians on the east coast of Australia moving to Thailand, and the two people we had this call with, one was based in Switzerland and the other one was based in London. So the time zones were, so we sat up sort of at this meeting was at 9 p.m. Australia time. It's like the morning in London. It's a cup of tea time in Switzerland, talking about an Asian move, which was a bit hilarious. But a lot of that conversation was around the actual relocation of our physical stuff and what we want to do and what does that process look like, which is then causing a whole lot of more conversations and thought processes and things because we have been doing lots of research into potential places to live and things in Bangkok. And we're finding that there's a really large percentage of accommodation, like apartments and condos and things in Bangkok, are actually fully furnished. And so we're then deciding, gosh, are we going to rent something furnished? If so, do we store all of this furniture in this ridiculously, a 6-bedroom farmhouse? So the stuff is big. Do we put it in storage? How long are we going for? Is it worth paying for storage of beds and mattresses and kitchen stuff for 5, potentially 10 years, when realistically I'm going to get home and be like, ew, this doesn't suit me anymore, or where we live,
Yeah.
or whatever. We can't fit this couch because we've ended up in somewhere else. And so we're sort of throwing around, is it better to try and find an unfurnished place, ship everything else because work's paying for it? They will give us sort of a 40-foot container, a shipping container to ship gear over to Bangkok. So we're like, are we better off finding an unfurnished place so we can literally just shift all this gear? And then when we decide what to do next, do we offload it in Bangkok and just not actually bring it back to Australia? Do we store books? Do we ship them? Do we give them away? Do we like all of those things? So I do have a trip. And again, I thought it was in 2 weeks. It's actually not. It's next Thursday. So I'm going
Oh gosh.
next Thursday. So I'm going. I've handballed the kids. So he flies on Monday. And so I'm going to go over on the Thursday or Friday next week. And I've booked in to go and have a look at a school, go and have a look at some condos, meet like an agent. And we're going a bit rogue. So the agent that's actually taking me around on to look at some condos next week is actually an independent woman who I think works for herself. I haven't met her before. She's come from a friend who has shared her number on WhatsApp. She's a Scottish expat that's been in Bangkok forever, apparently, and she literally will take people around, and she sort of works on commission from the landlord pays her. So it's of no cost to me, but it will give me a much better idea of the furnished, unfurnished thing. So I can, when I get back, I can be like, okay, there's a good chance we'll find something unfurnished. So I'm not going to start selling everything on Facebook Marketplace just yet. But if I get over there and I'm like, okay, we're not going to move this stuff, I'm going to have to start offloading, which then I then start thinking I can't offload things because I'm putting my house on the market and there's going to be people doing inspections and I still have to live in it. And so I
Yeah.
can't actually get rid of stuff. And then I start thinking like, it's going to be like a panic fire sale of all of our stuff like a week before we leave. And then if I haven't got rid of it, what do I do with it? Like I start
Yeah.
thinking about
I
the things.
think that, yes, I mean, you're sitting in this really difficult space right now of not knowing. And thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that, because I think so many of us can relate to it, especially people. And I think our network attracts doers. We're people that, we're wanting our careers to continue and we're wanting to stay motivated. Like that's the group that we have in our membership. And you are the like absolute definition of a doer. So having to like stop and wait is really, really challenging for you. And I think you are choosing the ways to action and keep a little control for yourself in really, really positive ways. So like going out and finding that person to help you with accommodation, that's just smart. Like that's a smart thing to do in terms of preparing yourself, but also I know you spoke last episode about preparing your kids. Even if you end up having to do a fire sale, you'll be able to have done all the pre-conversations with your kids around that, and you'll be able to manage it because you're Joe and you can do anything. I know because we have conversations outside of recording, so hard to believe. But I know you've also been really proactive in sort of reaching out and already starting to try and build your network in Bangkok. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because again, for anyone who has watched any of our episodes of not just the accompanying partner diaries, but also anything that we've uploaded with our different themes, and it might just be obvious generally, I'm very introverted. So the idea of just going gung-ho and making connections makes me feel a bit sick. Jo is the opposite, and she has already started that. In terms of like building your network and keeping a little control, let's talk a bit about how you're doing that socially.
So I feel like I'm a bit of a psycho really when it comes to this. Like you'll laugh because I haven't actually told you that I did this as well, but I went into my LinkedIn and went to my connections list and went to my first connections and then put Bangkok as their location. And I was like, who am I connected to that lives in Bangkok? And I sent some people some messages and was like, hi, I'm moving there. Do you still live there? Your LinkedIn says that you do. Anyway, there is one incredible woman that I met at an event randomly in Singapore, like pretty early on, I think, when we had first moved there. She's actually another Australian woman who comes from like a very remote little country town in Oz. And I heard her speak. She was an executive at Netflix, has this huge global role. And she obviously had an Australian accent, but then she must have dropped something in there that I was like, this chick is from the country. And so I went over to her afterwards and I was like, where are you from? And so we hit it off because she was like, oh, I don't meet many other bumpkins like in big cities in Southeast Asia. But she is married to a Thai guy and they live in Bangkok. And so we had connected on LinkedIn. I actually interviewed her on a podcast for one of my other companies, and she's just like an absolute legend. And so I pinged her and said, "Hey, do you still live in Bangkok?" And she said, "Yes." And she said, I said, "I'm moving." And she said, "What can you do? What can I do to help?" And I said, "You can have a coffee with me when I arrive." And so she's like, "Absolutely." I also, prior to, actually it was probably one of the first texts I fired off, was there was a family that had moved to Singapore from Bangkok who had girls at school with the girls in Singapore, and the mum and I had sort of caught up over the time that we were there, and the girls were good mates and going to each other's birthday parties and things. And so I messaged her and said, "Hey, do you still have any friends in Bangkok that you could introduce me to?" And she said, "Us, we've moved back." So she has just been a legend. And you said, being proactive is smart and all of those things. She has been an absolute lifeline already. So she's like, "Great. Here's where we're at school. Send the girls to school here. Live in these streets. Have a look at these condos. Here's my agent who will go and take you around and have a look. Like, here's good for coffee. Get this SIM card." Like, literally, it's been wild and is just making it super easy. So I'm not having to sort of go to that default, which is like one of the enormous big Facebook expat groups that you sort of trawl through a whole lot of stuff. I've had just someone that I'm like, I know enough of her that we're on the same wavelength. We've got kids the same age. I can imagine that her vibe on life is going to be pretty similar to mine. So it's made narrowing things down super easy, because everyone has said that, like, the traffic in Bangkok is diabolical, and you want to keep your triangle small. So your school, work, home triangle as small as possible. And literally where she said to go to school and to live is 2 stops on the metro from Hugh's office. So we're like just
Amazing.
lucking it as far as where things are. So um, those are 2 things. The third thing, which I don't think I've said to you either, which is again making me sort of cringe when I'm saying it out loud, but I was like, I work remotely. Where's somewhere snazzy that I can go and do this? And in this same little circle of neighborhood that Sam has sort of put me onto, there's this like super bougie social club that I've already been stalking. And I'm like, they let you, you can go and co-work in there, but they run events and things. And I was like, "Oh, look at all these snazzy people doing cool things." And so I'm just going to go and swing in there and suss out membership and see if, like, the bougie people I'm seeing on their Instagram like feed are ones that I want to go and hang out with. And it looks like there's lots of locals that socialize there and work there as well, which is also very cool. So those are my
That's
3
awesome.
things that I'm actively doing at the moment.
I love that, and it's very on brand for you. But, like, I think for our hope with doing these diary entries is that people will be able to watch in real time or back and sort of get some tips and tricks as well. I think, normalizing the challenging parts of it, which we absolutely have done at the start of this episode, but also, what can you proactively do? So you are incredible at that. Is there anything else that you've been doing in your own sort of research online? You mentioned sort of the, Facebook groups that exist. Anything else like that that you've been doing?
Well, I'm steering clear of those at the moment because I know I will once I get there, and it'll be like, where can I get real fresh milk? Or where can you buy blocks of cheese? Like, I know this is such a ridiculous thing, but like, Asian cultures are not really that big on a big block of tasty cheese to put on my sandwich. And tracking that down in Singapore was a challenge. I
Yeah.
literally, whenever we had visitors, people would be like, "Oh, can I bring anything?" And I'd be like, "Yes. Can you bring 2 like kilo blocks of cheese?" And they're like, "What?" I was like, "I don't even care if it's the home brand from the supermarket. Bring me blocks of cheese." And people would be like, "Okay." And note to self, you can put cheese in your checked in baggage. And because it's so cold under the plane, the cheese is in very good nick when it comes out, if you
That
don't live too
is
far from the
actually great
airport.
to know because I've been here 4.5 years and I still buy those like tiny little packs. And so we're going through mountains of it. So great. Excellent tip. Thank you.
Yeah. Kilo blocks of cheese delivered from Oz. Hot tip. The other thing that I have been doing, which my husband has been watching over my shoulder, because I generally do this while I'm like lying in bed, is using Google Street View, and I am literally wandering the streets on Google Street View of
Wow.
the neighborhoods. And I'm like looking for rubbish on the ground. Like, is this grotty? Like, noticing that literally I kept forgetting I haven't been in Asia for 18 months. So I'd sort of forgotten like the overhead power lines just everywhere, and just getting like a bit of a feel like, oh, there's so many, even in these residential areas, there's so many little food carts that people just set up on the street and things. And so really starting to try and get a bit of a feel. And my husband's just like, oh my God, you are a psychopath.
I I think it's a really good reminder of how small the world is, though. Like the connections that you're able to make through LinkedIn and the fact that you can do that wandering of the streets, that's incredible. And I would never have thought to do either of those things. So you're going to land there next Thursday or Friday, whenever you get there, and have such an incredible like sense already of what you want to get done in that period, but also where you are and how you're fitting into that space. I think it's incredible, Joe. I don't think many people would be tackling it to that detail. And I reckon you should probably take a minute to sort of pat yourself on the back.
Well, it might not be next week's one, but I think that maybe episode 4 we should do in real time with me being the Google Street View. And so we can be walking along having this conversation while I'm walking along in the street.
Give all our members motion sickness for one
Yeah,
episode.
yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. I'm literally just packing my trainers, I think. I'm just going to walk everywhere. And so that I've got an idea of how, okay, if we end up on this street, how would we walk to school and what does that look like? Having already been to the school will be really good because we'll do another tour of the school when the girls go over. Just even noting that I feel like I'm cheating a bit because I've had that contact who chose the same school as me in Singapore. So I'm assuming that there's a values alignment as far as the schooling things. But I'm not even looking at other schools. Like I'm pretty hope that it's not a disaster when I get there because I've sort of almost put all eggs in one basket. So I'm hoping that's going to be good. But for me to be able to be comfortable and confident walking around the school, even when I get there with the girls, like 3 or 4 weeks later, is going to be really great. So yeah, I'm excited. It'll be good. And I'm looking forward to our next episode because I'm sure there's going to be more stuff that's happened and I won't have even got on a plane yet.
I am positive there will be, especially I think you taking off on Monday and you prepping for your trip and the kids returning to school. I think we'll have a pretty decent episode to cover just on that alone without getting to your to-do list. So thank you
Great.
so much, Joe. Thank you, as always, for being so open and honest. And we'll be back next week.
Sounds good.
See ya.